Simple Rethink presents 3 mature moves for a stronger relationship. Romantic relationships are the most fertile nurseries for human expectations. The blueprint of how love should feel, who our partners should be, and how they should express affection and disagreement becomes a personalized standard of what another human being should become to us. These expectations become our measuring stick, determining whether we feel fulfilled or disappointed, secure or neglected, loved or unloved. But every relationship will eventually evolve into places of divergence. Lovers will disagree, they will misunderstand each other, and intentionally or unintentionally disappoint one another. This is the quiet tragedy of love. Two people who once felt perfectly attuned will one day discover that they are wired differently. The simple agreements that once felt effortless will require negotiation. The chemistry that once reconciled differences will no longer be able to mask them. The skill required for a happy relationship, therefore, is not merely the avoidance of conflict. It is learning how to regulate expectations in the presence of imperfection. In this video, we will discuss 3 mature moves for a stronger relationship. This will interest you. Let's dive in. Let adults be kids. The biggest expectation in a romantic relationship is the constant presence of maturity. At its core, the relationship contract is essentially a pledge to offer attention, devotion, and care. A partner is expected to provide understanding, anticipate needs, and act selflessly. It is therefore a given assumption that adults will always behave like adults. But much of the dynamic of a romantic relationship involves two people whose inner children are disguised as adults. In moments when a partner overreacts, becomes withdrawn, defensive, or selfish, when their actions betray your expectation for compassion, honesty, or respect, you may not be witnessing malice, but the confusion of the inner child still residing within them. This is because emotional triggers often bypass logic and maturity. Most relationships experience conflict not because the partners are bad, but because adulthood is not a flawless condition. The emotional disturbances that shape someone's early years may still echo in their present mindset. This means that adults are also at times children. They will repeat the mistakes that causes offense. They may choose defensiveness when accountability is needed, or selfishness when generosity is required. Their fear will sometimes override reason. Their pride will sometimes block vulnerability. Their insecurity will sometimes disguise itself as anger. Just as a child would cry when overwhelmed or throws a tantrum when unable to articulate a need, adults can lash out, shut down, or act irrationally when they feel unseen or afraid. These episodes of transgression are not always driven by intentional harm, cruelty, or selfishness. Rather, like children, adults sometimes act impulsively or irrationally. This is the mature move. Learn to parent moments of disappointment with empathy rather than retaliation. Learn to see your partner's failings not as betrayal, but as episodes of emotional immaturity. Be prepared to accept that their mind may be shaped by irrational patterns they do not fully understand, and that they, like you, will sometimes be scared, impulsive, or selfish. But tolerance is not an excuse for bad behavior. It is an understanding that prevents escalation. It is not weakness, but emotional leadership that prevents minor immaturity from becoming major damage. To live happily in a relationship often requires treating another adult with the patience, sympathy, and tenderness you would naturally offer a child. And on some days, it will require extending that same compassion to yourself. Permit the habits you accepted. The early encounters at the beginning of every relationship are typically sessions of observation, learning, and negotiation. In these early stages, we may notice patterns of detachment, inconsistency, or emotional ambiguity. Yet even after recognizing these patterns, we often proceed into the relationship. This acceptance, spoken or unspoken, becomes the binding contract of the relationship. Every relationship is built on this silent contract that says, I see who you are, and I am willing to proceed. But we may have chosen the known version of a person while secretly expecting the emergence of a better version of them. Once the relationship feels secure, we may begin to expect qualities not present during the early negotiation phase. We may expect discipline where we once saw inconsistency, depth where we once saw charm, and demand change where we once offered tolerance. When a partner fails to meet these revised expectations, disappointment follows. But the patterns you noticed at the beginning were not temporary imperfections. They were indicators of long-term tendencies. If a pattern was visible early on, your decision to enter the relationship with this foreknowledge is, in many ways, permission for its continuation. If you noticed emotional unavailability or poor communication and still chose to begin the relationship, you made an implicit pledge of acceptance of that version of them. To demand radical change afterward can feel like a violation of the original agreement, because to demand transformation without a renegotiation can easily result in resentment. This is the mature move. When confronted with the unpleasant patterns that were visible from the start, and when change proves difficult, slow, or incomplete, you must return to the honesty of your original choice. You were not misled into the relationship. You made your observations, you evaluated the choice, and you proceeded. It becomes important to honor the reality of your original choice. This is not a call to endure disrespect, neglect, or abuse. It is not an argument against accountability or a tolerance of abuse or disrespect. It is a recognition that informed acceptance is a mature move for living happily in a relationship. The solution is not enforcing transformation, it is honoring the choice you made. Pessimism is wisdom. The golden rule of a romantic relationship is the expectation that a partner will be kind, caring, and unselfish. They should be emotionally available, intuitively sense our needs, and offer support without being asked. However, the belief that one human being will be emotionally flawless is a form of romantic idealism, an expectation rooted more in hope than in psychological reality. No matter how aligned a relationship feels at the beginning, the emergence of difference is inevitable. Your partner will sometimes misunderstand you. They will occasionally prioritize their own needs. They will sometimes respond impractically. There will be moments of neglect when care is required. At times, they may be unwilling, or simply emotionally incapable, of offering the empathy you desire. When you are unprepared for these shortcomings, your unmet expectations transform into resentment, and resentment, when accumulated, becomes unhappiness. This is the mature move. The safeguard against disappointments in a relationship is the practice of moderated expectation. This is how pessimism becomes wisdom. If you can accept, with steadiness and grace, that your partner will not always get it right, and that their flaws are a common human expression, your moderated expectations will release you from the fantasy of perfection and anchor you in reality. This is not cynicism or hopelessness, but a calm readiness to accept, without bitterness, that flaws are not anomalies in love and relationships, but features of it. But moderated expectations are not the same as lowered accountability. To expect flaws is not to accept bad behavior. To acknowledge occasional absence is not to tolerate chronic neglect. To prepare for misunderstanding is not to permit mistreatment. Pessimism is the wisdom for a moderated expectation of in a relationship. It creates emotional resilience. Resilience fosters tolerance. And the practice of tolerance is a mature move for a happy relationship. Here is the conclusion. The paradox of romantic love is this. Happiness does not emerge from finding a flawless partner, but from releasing the demand that one exists. To live happily in a relationship requires accepting that some of our expectations of love are inherently impractical, shaped more by fantasy than by human psychology. Fulfillment grows not when a partner perfects their character, but when we regulate our assumptions about who they can realistically be. When expectations become more measured, conflict loses its catastrophic meaning, understanding begins to replace idealization, and conflict, no longer fueled by impossible standards, gradually softens into tolerance. The biggest mature move required for a happy relationship is not the actual avoidance of disagreement, it is the discipline of regulating expectations in the presence of imperfection. Treat your expectations as hopes, not rules. Rules demand flawlessness, but hope allows for understanding. Some hopes will not be fulfilled, and that must be okay. If any part of this discourse made you rethink, it means you like this video. Give it a like and hit the subscribe button. Turn on the notification bell and be among the first to watch our next video. Thank you and goodbye.